Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Now let's not forget when something like 500 billion rand came to South Africa to combat the COVID crisis. 200 billion rand of that was put aside for PPEs and stuff like that, and a huge amount of that money was misallocated. This is all under Zweli Mkhize's watch. He was apparently one of the more credible ministers with integrity in the corrupt ANC government. Well, how he's fallen on his sword. Here comes a video where you'll hear through digital vibes how Zweli Mkhize was on the take. He might have been a minor player compared to people like Ace Magashula and Julius Malema, but they're all on the take. Please remember to subscribe to Loving Life on YouTube to be kept informed. Please remember to register on lovinglifetv.com to be kept informed. Please like this video, please share this video, and above all, please stay safe. Bye for now.
The Special Investigating Unit, which is seeking to recoup millions of rand spent on the controversial Digital Vibes contract, has accused the Health Minister, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, of unlawful and improper conduct for his role, and it wants his family to repay an amount of 4 million rand. In court papers filed in the Special Tribunal on Thursday, the SIU wants the 150 million rand contract reviewed and set aside for those implicated to be ordered to pay the SIU or the Department of Health the very money they received with interest. Joining me now to discuss this are Sandile Swana, political analyst, and Makosini Mkhize is a political commentator and indeed analyst himself. We also hoping to be joined at some point by the Sunday Times investigative journalist Sabelo Skiti. But let's start with the gentlemen who are with me right now. Let me start with you, Dr. Swana. This is the opening statement I give to all my panelists on this segment of the show, and it's got to do with one uniform question that you've all got to answer, and that is that should the health minister resign amid the mounting evidence that seems to be stacked against him if that SIU report is anything to go by?
Yes, there is the report on the one hand, and also the what you would call the court papers in the special tribunal to recover the funds. So the issues that are being raised are starting to go beyond mere speculation, because they are now going to be tested in a formal tribunal where evidence will be led and the affidavits are on the table. I've read the affidavit, 87 pages from the SIU, and I think with the evidence that is then the transactions that have gone on and how they've been authorized, I think it is time for Dr. Zweli Mkhize to step down.
Mr. Mkhize, your thoughts? Should the health minister fall on his sword?
Look, what is happening now, probably, is bad for the country, is bad for the government, is bad for the ANC, and it is even bad for Dr. Mkhize himself. I think the question is really beyond that. He should have resigned a long time ago. And I think the fact that he stays in his position, it means that this matter just keeps going on and on and on. And the longer it goes, the worse he looks to us as members of the public. I think on the basis of the evidence that the SIU has put forward and what has been reported on by the media, it's very, very difficult really to absolve him of any wrongdoing. But the people who he is accused of being involved with this in are people that are known to be very close to him, including his own son. So I think that, for the sake of the country, so that when we meet like this, like we're meeting now, we can talk about this problem that we're facing of COVID, the rollout of vaccination and all that, and not to talk really about a health minister who just refuses to leave as if somehow, he's anointed in this position. I think he should have resigned a long time ago.
All right, so those are the opening statements. Perhaps the question is, what is the health minister waiting for then, if all of this evidence that is stacked against him seems to be checking out as far as the court papers that we are seeing? You've heard about the 80-page document that Mr. Swana was speaking about, and it does seem to go some distance in leveling these accusations against the health minister. So what is he waiting for? We'll get the segment of the show. It is called The Uncensored Debate. We are joined by political analysts Sandile Swana and Makhosini Mkhize, and we add to the conversation now Sunday Times investigative reporter that's Sabelo Skiti. Gentlemen, thank you all for making time to talk to you, to talk to us. Let's bring you into the conversation, Sabelo Skiti. The Sunday Times report on the front page today, it's actually your story, and the headline goes, Zweli's cash and carry. That's according to the SIU. Sabelo, the SIU, in essence, it's demanding 4 million rand from the health minister's family. Break it down for us, how these monies were allegedly paid to the minister's family. That's who I want to first talk about first.
So, good afternoon, Julian. Good afternoon to all the viewers. The nub of the SIU's case here is that forensic accounting was able to trace, money paid out of Digital Vibes. Firstly, to an associate of the minister, Taira Martha, to her own account. It was an amount of about 20 million rand. And then that money then gets disseminated across a number of accounts. But I think what piqued the SIU's interest is some money that was firstly paid to a gentleman who is involved in the cash and carry business there in Stanger. So when they then started speaking to the people involved in this chain, they quickly found out that, Taira had sort of created a very sort of rudimentary way of laundering money, where money would be EFT'd to this particular gentleman. His name is Yakub Desai. Then he would then get cash from his business or from the business and pass it to another gentleman, Mr. Ghani. Mr. Ghani would then take this money in plastic packets as well as in cardboard boxes and deliver it to Rida Hariram. You would remember Rida Hariram is the actual director of Digital Vibes, the person whose details were used to set the business up. Once there, she would then take this money with her to work, and it is then alleged that the minister's son, Gauteng and MkwaZulu-Natal, would then make trips. They count up to 6 trips that he made collecting this money. That money, ended up being just over 3.4 million rand, it says, that was EFT. And then the rest of it is then money that was paid electronically by Taira directly to Gauteng and MkwaZulu-Natal, and some of it was paid to a car dealership to purchase a 4x4 Land Cruiser. That was also registered in Gauteng and Mkhize's name. So there they were able to piece together what they argued to be undue gratification, for the minister's family. Of course, one of the things that they did do on the side of Digital Vibes is to try and find out whether these payments were in any way justified by sort of saying, were these for services or products that the company was purchasing? Are they invoices for these payments? And of course, the invoices couldn't be found.
That's the money trail. Makhosini Mkhize, I saw you chuckling a bit there as you heard about the trips, the 6 trips there. It's laughable, but at the same time, very serious. And it actually is disgusting, given that the people that we are talking about here, this is the son of a health minister who is trusted by this country to run a department in a time of crisis. Let me ask you this question. As far as Minister Mkhize and the allegations against him are concerned, it is said there that he acted improperly and actually his actions border on unlawfulness. Why? Because he put pressure on the Health Department Director General, Malebona Matsoso, via repeated text messages to approve the communication contract for Digital Vibes. My question to you, will it be possible for Mkhize to disprove these allegations, given that they are directly from his cell phone, it would seem? I think you muted, Mr. Mkhize. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we can now.
Yeah, I'm saying it's going to be very difficult. It's difficult for him even now because of the personalities that are involved. But also if, the Director General and other people within the department talk about him putting pressure on them to approve the contract, that would go against the rules of government because ministers don't get involved into those things. He could have said maybe that, he sees pressure, the department is not communicating the way it's supposed to be communicating. But I think for him, he should have put pressure on the department to communicate and do whatever it needs to do so that it can communicate better during the time of, the lockdown and during the time of the pandemic. So it doesn't look very good for him. It looks very bad. And I think that, on the other hand, the president, is very cautious not to act before all the due processes have been completed. Because if we look at this, I think behind this, there is a campaign that perhaps was being planned if it hadn't already started on the part of Minister Zweli Mkhize. And the president must be careful because if he dismisses him before all due processes have been followed, he could have a political backlash in that Minister Zweli Mkhize could be out there decampaigning the president together with other people. So he has to be very careful. So the onus here is going to be on the minister himself to follow his conscience and to look at the interest of the country, that the country can't move forward. We can't be focused on this pandemic if we are focused on him. And also we need to have a permanent Minister of Health. It's very good that the acting minister, Mamloko Kubai, seems to be really doing very well, at least in terms of vaccine rollout. But we need a permanent minister, and something has to be done with Zweli Mkhize, who I don't think that he could be able to proceed in his position, even if something were to happen. So I think that the sooner he resigns, the sooner he's fired, the better.
Gentlemen, I'm going to continue this conversation in a moment. Mr. Swana, you're up after this short breather. We continue the conversation in just a moment. Very good afternoon to you. You're watching the uncensored debate here on Politics Unscripted, and still in conversation with me are Sabelo Skiti, Sunday Times investigative journalist, and alongside two political analysts, Makosini Mkhize and Sandile Swana. Mr. Swana, let's come to you. Sabelo Skiti has done a good job of sketching for us on that page 2 of the Sunday Times as to who got what from Digital Vibes. And it looks like the biggest chunk of some of this money has gone to a company called Composite Trade and Investments. This is a company owned by Tahira Mather. And Tahira Mather, if you're not aware who she is, let's just paint a picture for you. So Tahira Mather is a former personal assistant to Zweli Mkhize, and this company also co-owned by Nadira Mitha, who is also a former secretary to Mkhize. What does this tell us, Mr. Swana, about the relations between the Health Minister Zweli Mkhize and these two individuals I have just spoken about?
Thank you so much. What we need to notice is that these two individuals we are talking about were brought into the portfolio of COGTA, which is the local government, municipalities and traditional affairs, where Dr. Zweli Mkhize was minister before coming to health. Mm-hmm. He brought these people there and maneuvered the situation there to appoint them on top of people who already had positions there. When he moved portfolios, he did the same thing. And in a certain way, it became difficult to the point that a vehicle such as Digital Vibes had to be introduced in order to accommodate them. So what am I saying? I'm saying there's a pattern where financial irregularities necessitated that wherever he goes, Dr. Zweli Mkhize moves with Mitha and Mather to assist in that. And I think in the breakdown of the people who have received this money, especially in the court papers, you should also highlight the fact that Royal Batra, which is linked to Kuselwa Diko, is also one of the highlighted beneficiaries in the court papers.
Yes.
So what that tells us is that amongst the comrades, there are certain people. This is a scheme. This was not coincidental. There's a scheme. There's a consortium of people who are directly involved. And lastly, what is not clear is where did the other monies go? We know that the Dani Mabunu Mkhize, the son of Dr. Zweli Mkhize, received this money, bought a buggy. We know that. We don't know what the other money that he received cash, whether it ended up in his bank account and he just enjoyed it. But the other monies, we don't know which other comrades may have received all the other monies that were being distributed widely. So this forms a pattern of organized crime, even a certain type of racketeering that has been sustained over time by the participants, Mather, and Mkhize himself. Thank you.
Sabelo Skiti, let's come to you. Previously, the Minister, Zweli Mkhize, responding to this scandal, he described his relationship with Mitha and Mather in a particular way. Take us back to how Mkhize has described his relationship with these two individuals at the center of this controversy.
Well, I mean, you might recall, I think, when the allegations initially came out, he via the Daily Maverick, he was sort of saying, these people are sort of distant to him, they couldn't be what he would call associates, if you recall. And I mean, for me, it was quite funny because this isn't the only sort of, thing that fell apart in his story. And I think in a way, for me, this is why I think I differ a bit with Mr. Mkhize when he says it's understandable that the president is taking as long as it's taking. Because number one of the things that the SIU investigation does is that it shows that on a number of occasions, the minister has simply not told the truth about this matter. Yeah. Number one is the issue that you're citing of the relationships. The second issue is the issue when he says that he did not personally benefit. We know now, of course, that he did personally benefit with payments that were made towards the maintenance of a property that he owns in Bryanston, and of course then through the son. Even if he were to maybe sustain his claim that Martha and Mitha are not close to him, But for me, I think what is particularly egregious in terms of his conduct as a cabinet minister is that, number one, he not only allows these people to come into the department in a clandestine fashion. They had been holding meetings as soon as he was sort of sworn in as minister. They started getting involved in work, and he was aware of this work to a point where at sometimes he was instructing the Director General to sort of provide information, for Martha in particular. And at some stage, he even texts her and says that sort out the contractual, issues around, the NHI, and then let's get an implementation plan rolling. At that time, he knew very well that there had been no procurement process at all to bring this individual in to do this work. So why is he saying that a contract must be concluded when he knows that there is no process to bring this particular individual in? So, I mean, in terms of that does not really need, him that to be tested before a court of law. All the evidence is there. Also when he approves the first budget of 85.5 million for communication on NHI, he had been in a cabinet meeting less than 2 weeks before, where cabinet had actually, resolved to issue a memorandum that said that all the communication must be done via GCIS. So on what basis is he then approving the Department of Health to actually set aside a budget for something that his own colleagues, and I presume that he was part of them, he agreed in those meetings that GCIS must be the ones that are leading this communication on NHI. So I think for me, in terms of what the president needs to take action against the minister is there. And I think it's one of those things where maybe we are now being, held by ANC unity considerations. We do know, of course, that, the KZN is a really touchy place for the president right now. So how much of that is weighing into him sort of taking, a decision that is very clear?
Sabelo Skiti, what you've done now is that you have actually given us a leeway to bring into the conversation, when you talk about KZN, we bring into the conversation another minister in this cabinet who is splashed in the front page of the City Press. That's Mr. Blade Nzimande. And after this short breather, we're going to talk about the challenges that face the president. Can he afford to withhold this, or to avoid, perhaps is the question, this cabinet reshuffle that clearly now stares at him in the face? The segment of the show, it's the uncensored debate. Well, let's get into this conversation about why the president is perhaps taking his time. Mr. Mkhize, let's come to you. Sabelo Skiti points to unity considerations in the ANC that might be playing out as to why it is perhaps that the president is somehow almost held to ransom, if you like. Zweli Mkhize hails from KZN. Sabelo Skiti mentions KZN. Blade Nzimande is not only a leader of one of the key alliance partners of the ANC, the SACP, but now the Director General, whom he has placed on suspension, is saying that Blade Nzimande wanted me to do wrong things. Now, my question to you is, what does the president do? Because at the moment, the understanding is that these two people are very solid allies of his, and in particular, they would come in handy as far as bringing in the KZN crowd, or the KZN leg of the vote, if conference were to happen tomorrow. What does he do when he reshuffles this cabinet, if he does eventually?
Gordon, I think what we need to be focusing on as a country is what I would call electoral reform, so that we change the way we elect, our leaders. President Ramaphosa gets his mandate from the ANC, because it's the ANC that deploys him in parliament and deploys him in government. So he has to manage the sensitivities that are in the ANC. He doesn't have his own mandate. He was not elected directly by the people of South Africa so that he can do what he thinks must be done without making any considerations. He's sitting with a situation where the election is a few months away, and if this elected ANC performs poor.
Oh, Makosini Mkhize, I think is frozen there for a moment. Babuswana, perhaps do you want to come in and complete Makosini Mkhize's thoughts?
Yes. The issue here is that there has been some progress that Ramaphosa has made in sort of this thing that is called unity in the ANC. We know now that he's got the majority in the NEC, and changing the cabinet, reshuffling the cabinet, is about also not only about improving the performance of the cabinet, but also taking influential people away from the Mahashuda Zuma slate or consortium, whatever you want to call it, into his side. Because in the ANC, you incentivize people to join your side, and you look for influential people like Mbalula, for instance. Mbalula was incentivized to come across from the NDZ to this side. So they are there, and Cyril has got something to offer to solidify his position in order to get a second term. I agree with the suggestion that is being made by Mr. Mkhize that eventually we need electoral reform, but that electoral reform is going to take very long. It's not going to affect the municipal elections now. It won't affect the conference of the African National Congress next year. It's unlikely to affect the 2024 elections. It's going to take quite some time. But immediately, Cyril Ramaphosa, you can use the cabinet posts that are available to incentivize people to support him. The KZN issue is very, very tedious indeed, including the violence that we've seen recently. So he needs to choose people carefully who can have support there. You remember the likes of Mkhunu, Senzo Mkhunu, and others. There are camps in KZN, so you need to choose carefully who you put on your side, who can bring in the numbers and the support and also bring more calmness in KZN itself.
Mr. Mkhize, you were interrupted there as your picture froze. Are we not making excuses, though, for President Ramaphosa's inaction? Because perhaps he should come in for the hammering, because he does not need to be sitting and waiting when he has an explosive report in front of him that suggests that his health minister has done wrong.
Look, there's no doubt about that. The president has to act. All I'm doing is just to give you the perspective as to what could be, weighing against that decision in his mind, or maybe, prompting him to be a bit more cautious. But, we have to hold him accountable. He ran on an anti-corruption slate to be ANC president. He ran on an anti-corruption, platform when he was elected president of the country. The parliament, everyone should hold him accountable for what is happening. But whether or not he can act the way we want him to act, that's another matter. But we have to keep piling pressure on him, and I think that will also empower him within the National Executive Committee, because he can point out to criticism that could be coming from the media, the commentators, and everybody else. But I have to say, we haven't seen the media put as much pressure on him as it did, for instance, on President Jacob Zuma. I think if we were talking about a President Jacob Zuma currently and another minister in that cabinet, I think the voices would have been much higher, calling for him to resign or to be fired. But I think even as the media, we have to move on from this idea that Cyril Ramaphosa represents what's new within the ANC. He is a member of the ANC. The ANC itself has become a corrupt party in that the majority of the people there are affected by corruption, and corruption is more of a rule than an exception. So pressure must be mounted on the president.
Sabelo, let's come to you. The minister, the acting Minister of Health, told this channel this week that there are 4 individuals within the health department that are going to undergo the disciplinary hearings. And I want to ask of you about a specific individual, and this is the person who was acting DG around the same time as the approval of the Digital Vibes contract, and that's the Deputy Director General, Anban Pillay. Is he going to be disciplined and flesh out what the alleged role he played during this approval of this contract?
Yeah. So I think in a way of answering you, Toli, I'd like to firstly cite, an article that was published in, I think it was the Sunday World newspaper, quite a while ago. I mean, that story was hidden away, I think on page 5 or something. But it spoke about the department at the time wanting to take action against 2 individuals, Dr. Pillay, and then the head of communications, Mr. Popo Macha. And, the story was told in a way that it gave one the impression that Dr. Pillay was able to stave away these charges by sort of, indicating that he will spill the beans, basically. He will tell the truth about what happened and, who wanted what to happen. And then the story then sort of says that issue was put into abeyance. Now it's critical to then also look at what the SIU says about some of the people that are currently in the department right now. So firstly, Dr. Pillay is basically painted as the individual who was on the administrative side, the person that ran to make sure that all of these things happen. He is the one that is said to have introduced Digital Vibes to the department when the department was issuing a closed RFP to communications companies. After he introduced the company, he then sat on the specifications committee that drew up the specifications for the RFP. And after that, he sat on the evaluations committee. We all know what the SIU says about, what a sham the evaluations process was. After that, when Dr. Pillay then became the acting Director General, the letter of award is supposed to be signed by him. It doesn't get signed by him, obviously, to try and not leave, fingerprints on things that are easily, that are easily dismissible, in a manner of speaking. When the contract is signed, again, he doesn't sign as the acting HOD. He makes a junior official, sign that contract, or rather, I should say, a junior official signs that contract. So already it shows you that he's got a case to answer. But then where the SIU report also goes for me, interestingly, is that when a permanent HOD is hired, Dr. Buthelezi that we have now, a strange thing happens is that he then writes to another senior official in the department, I think it was the CFO, and he basically says he wants all of the information and all of the documents related to Digital Vibes to be taken to his office, as he is now going to deal with this information. So now the question is, why were these documents being taken from where they ought to be rightfully sitting to be put in the office under one individual? And then secondly, why is then that same individual now is seemingly moving very slowly on any sort of internal disciplinary process against people that were found to not have done their jobs correctly in this matter? Remember, before the SIU, basically put this information in the public domain, there had been the Ngubane Advisory Forensic Investigation, and the SIU investigation actually cites that report. And a lot of the information that the SIU relies on is information that had already been uncovered by Ngubane. So the question is, why are we here, months later, with no action being taken against anyone in the department? I think it's unfair to sort of focus on the president alone. The Department of Health and certainly even the acting minister, I might argue, have to explain themselves.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, this is where the time really becomes the enemy because, as Sabelo says, it's not just the health department that is at fault here or where action needs to be taken, but there's a whole manner of other departments. Thank you very much to all my guests for having joined me for this discussion. We can't continue it any further, unfortunately, but I guess it does paint a picture of just how bad the cabinet of President Cyril Ramaphosa right now is, and at what point does the president eventually take action? That's how we wrap up the uncensored debate.